The views expressed by the speakers of CamaPlan podcasts are those of the speakers only and may not reflect those of Cama, its members, or employees. Cama does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by these speakers. Professional advisors should be consulted before implementing any options presented. Cama absolutely does not endorse or recommend any individual or organization, including the speakers. Cama, its members, and employees do not accept liability for losses and/or damages arising from errors or omissions within, reliance upon, or any use of the information provided by the speakers. Individuals are strongly encouraged by Cama to conduct their own due diligence before making any investment choices. Cama does not act as, nor offer the services of, an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. If tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other similar expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Hello and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom, a podcast that allows experts to share their stories and secrets to unlocking their financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator in Ambler, Pennsylvania, that is focused on educating investors with different ways to grow their retirement savings faster through alternative investments. And I know you know the drill by this point. We are continuing to record our podcast remotely as to stay safe in these crazy times. I'm Jess Jones, CamaPlan team member and your podcast host. This week, we're joined by someone who wears many hats as an investor, serial entrepreneur, husband, father, podcaster, and cash flow coach. After learning how he could replace his income through cash flow investing, he expanded his newfound passion to help others achieve cash flow by developing advanced strategies of their own through media-based education and training. He is a member of the Forbes Finance Council and the creator and host of several top-rated business and investing podcasts, which have been downloaded over 3 million times in over 180 countries. His mission as the Cashflow Ninja is to empower people through digital platforms to take control of their wealth, escape the rat race, and achieve the freedom to allow investors to live their legacies. Please welcome MC Laubscher to our podcast. MC, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Me too. You've been such great help and a great inspiration for us at CamaPlan as we've developed our podcast. So, I'm excited to get down and talk to you about you a little bit more. So I'm really excited. We'll get started. And, you can just start by telling me some more about your background, where you were born, where you grew up, if you went to school and where you went, what you studied, all of those great things that kind of started your early life before you got involved in investing.
Absolutely. I'm originally from South Africa, so I grew up in a very interesting time in the country's history, transitioning from the then apartheid government to a democratically elected government. So it was a very interesting time in the country's history. I was in high school at the time. Spent some, obviously went to university in South Africa too, and then. Why I mention that really is it ties into how eventually I got into investing, but just planting the seed that I have to critically think and question everything, which was something that really, really helped me throughout the rest of my life. And I'm really, really fortunate to, at a young age, experiencing that because that led me eventually to alternative investments, right? Questioning things critically in everything in life, which we should do. But after South Africa, I traveled a little bit. I ended up in the United States, and I was just blown away with the unbelievable opportunity that this amazing country has to offer. So it's a country where I literally came with 2 suitcases and $500, a sense of humor and a sense of adventure. And I couldn't believe the upward mobility that was available to anyone that was willing to be disciplined, make short-term sacrifices to achieve overall and long-term success, and really, really work hard and go after their dreams and their vision. I ended up playing in a sports league in the United States. That's how I ended up getting my start here. I played. I had a scholarship in university for rugby, and I played semi-professional rugby, and eventually was a member of the United States men's national team practice squad and training squad up until 2007. So I played in a sports league. I got to travel quite a bit, and while I was doing that, I really read a lot and studied a lot. And what spurred that for me was my mom actually gave me a book that came out in 1997. This is now 2001, 2002, but the book was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. And it really changed. It was one of those moments in your life where you're like, wow, this is a completely different take on wealth and money and investing. What else is there that I should know that I haven't been exposed to? So I studied and read as much as I can, and took action, started investing in real estate. And this was all while I was pursuing my career in athletics and as a rugby player, and met a friend that was a very, very large multifamily real estate investor. His family owned many, many units on the north side of Chicago where I was staying at the time. And I started working in real estate, literally doing very small property management tasks, maintenance, painting, turning around apartments. I always said it was such a gift because I learned that business from the bottom up, from cleaning properties to turning around units, to painting them, to getting them ready, to eventually leasing units, to eventually managing over 500 units for that specific individual, and then eventually getting my real estate broker's license and being part of the acquisitions team for that investor. So that was a gift. And then the alternative asset bug really, really bit me. I just started learning. I kept on learning and working and learning more in that. I started to invest myself in real estate too, and I really saw the power especially cash flow investing has. It was one of those aha moments, when you read something in a book and you do it yourself, you actually execute, you buy your first property, you get a tenant in there, they pay rent, and at the end of the month, when you pay all of your expenses associated with that property, you had money left over. And I just thought this was the greatest thing ever. I couldn't believe it, that the theory translated to real world. And of course, every real estate investor that's listening to this will chuckle because they know that's when school really starts.
Yeah.
It's you have folks that don't necessarily pay rent on time or fail to pay rent. There's some damage. I mean, all the stuff that comes along with investing. But it was a great learning experience and a big moment that I'll always cherish because I saw what was possible through cash flow investing and generating monthly cash flow. And the question I had at that stage is, well, how many times can I do this? How many properties can I get that generates cash flow and pays me monthly income? And I started looking at as how can I replace or buy time, essentially, because that's what you do through cash flow investing. So how could I buy my time back through acquiring assets that pay me monthly income, so that it'll eventually free me up from the job that I was doing at the time. And as I was going through this process of learning, I came across some wealth strategies in other areas, and I learned about a lot of different aspects of a wealth strategy. I think sometimes as investors, we focus so much on one area, and we don't necessarily see the big picture. And I saw that all of these successful investors, that I surrounded myself with, they were very successful in real estate investing, but they really knew where to position capital. They really had a very powerful tax strategy. They had a very powerful asset protection strategy. They have a really powerful estate planning strategy. So there was many different things. And that's what led me to infinite banking and how to use life insurance as a place to position capital more efficiently. It was a very powerful strategy that I then saw. I started to utilize and implement it, take action, and and jump into it. And I saw the power of this and how I combined it with real estate investing. And it really essentially put rocket fuel on what I was already doing and accelerating results for me. And eventually that led me to start my own firm. This was about 5 years ago. We started Producers Wealth that helps folks now in 50 states virtually set up infinite banking policies for themselves to implement and execute as part of their overall strategy. And in 2016, I started Cashflow Ninja, where we share how to create, protect, and multiply your wealth and income in any economy and in any marketplace, teaching and sharing all of these many strategies that took me almost 2 decades to figure out.
Right. Yeah.
So we're teaching that to a global audience. As you mentioned, we've been listened to and downloaded now in over 180 countries, and we've just been very blessed with the growth and the impact that we've had, and we continue to focus on expanding that growth and impact and helping as many people possible out there achieve financial independence and financial freedom to live their legacy today.
Wow. So you have such an impressive story and such a interesting background. I do have a couple of follow-up questions just based off of everything you provided to us, MC. So when you were starting out in investing, were you still involved in your athletics, and how did that balance have to work, and how did you find certain life lessons or discipline lessons that you were picking up from your athletics were starting to incorporate themselves in your real estate investing or your or the work you were doing on the properties that you were working with the multifamily investor that you had started working with? Is that something that you had to figure out balance of? When do you start saying, all right, these are things I got to start cutting and these are the things I have to start focusing on? So can you talk a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. While I was pursuing a career in athletics and playing rugby, the one great thing that, and it's just rugby players out there will nod their heads when I said it's such a great community in the United States and globally. You're part of like a global family. Mm-hmm. There's a kinship amongst all these rugby players. So what rugby did for me was the ability to travel and see the world and meet amazing people. Rugby players are very interesting folks. We're ranging from lawyers, doctors, business owners. I mean, it's a very, very interesting group of people. Most people that come across them said, wow, I'd never realized that there were so many people from so many different walks of life. So I really got to meet a lot of great people. I really got to travel a lot, which the traveling, especially, and doing rugby almost full time at that stage, it was very hard to find, I would say, your standard employment, your 9 to 5.
Right.
There's not a lot of employers that's going to say, well, that's great. Yeah. Why don't you just check in whenever you want? And, you just go and travel and take off when you need, right?
Right.
So what I did was real estate was perfect actually at that stage to do that, because there was a lot of things that I could do while traveling on the road, and there was also, when I was physically in the city, a lot of things that I could do. So it was a really good fit. As far as the prioritizing of things, I was chasing my dream at that stage in athletics, but I knew that there was going to be life after that. And one of the important things that I've seen from a lot of folks in my network and from a lot of other successful athletes is they knew that there was a life after that. So while they were pursuing a career in the sports that they were playing, they were doing things that would position them for a life after sports, which I think is a very powerful thing to do. And you see a lot of folks do that very successfully. And unfortunately, you see a lot of folks not doing that.
Right. I have a background in theater, and I see that almost all the time. Even still a couple years out from graduating college, I am starting to see that. There are people who, like myself, that are kind of like, okay, well, there is the dream, and then there is the idea that you need the money to support yourself to do it. Right. But you also need all of those sorts of things. I like the way you frame it. There is a life after your dream, and the idea that, life stops after you achieve one dream doesn't mean that, that limits you to the idea of having other passions, other things that you enjoy. So I like what you're saying here. It resonates a lot with with me and my own background.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that really was amazing was, for me, another big moment of realization while I was pursuing my career in sports was the many things from sports that actually translate to business and investing.
Right. Yeah.
So I took the exact same approach, which really accelerated results too. I mean, when you're playing sports or you're trying to become an actor or an actress, there's certain things that you do immediately, right? We all have role models, just as humans. We look at folks that are successful at what they're doing, and you figure out, well, what makes them successful. So when I was pursuing my career in sports, I always looked at what the best players were doing. So what were they eating? What did their day look like? Or what does their strength and conditioning plan look like? I broke down all of that. What is their habits? How do they carry themselves? And then also I broke down hours of game tape and film studying the best players in the world in my position to figure out what they were doing, what made them different from everyone else. And I realized, being part of a team, how important a team is, and how everyone in a team has different roles and different strengths. Mm-hmm. And I took that same perspective and that same approach to business and to building and creating wealth, where I try to figure out, okay, who are the folks that have really figured out this wealth creation and wealth building game, and what are they doing? What sets them apart? What are they doing differently from everyone else? And then what is some of the things that they have set up in all the other areas of their lives? And then also with the team approach, I took the same thing. I do not need to be the smartest person in every aspect. As a matter of fact, you want to be the dumbest person in the room, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I always want to be the person, the dumbest person in the room, if I can state that, because I want to have someone that is my tax strategist that knows so much more than taxes that I do, right? So you want to have someone that is focused on what they're good at, their unique ability, focusing and playing to their strengths, just as in sports, where so I can focus on what I need to do. So, and as the CEO of your life, as we always share with folks, that they are the CEO of their own lives. As the CEO, you're the person responsible for setting the vision, creating the culture, and managing your team to move closer towards your goal every single day of your life. So there was a lot of lessons learned. It was a lot of fun, and there's still things that I learned during that time, which I utilize today. And as a matter of fact, every day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of the focus on a team and what you were able to pick up from your background in rugby and how you were able to bring that into your life as an investor, and how you've been able to educate other investors with that sort of mindset. The 3 tenets that you just laid out, I think, are extremely helpful, especially for someone younger who might be starting out, that it's new and might be looking as like to you or something like that as a role model. You know what I mean? So I think that that's really great stuff, MC. And then the other thing you bring up is, Rich Dad Poor Dad was a book that you had been given, and it really opened up a lot of doors. It changed the way you started thinking about things. Was there anything else or any other person that, inspired you to say, all right, like, I'm going to become an entrepreneur? Was it, that book plus the multifamily housing that you got involved in with someone that you had known? Or was there anything else that kind of, all right, this is the thing that I remember?
Yeah, absolutely. The book opened up my eyes to the possibility. And then I ended up exploring as much as I can and reading as much as I can and studying. That's the great thing about the time that we live in. I always say we live in the greatest time ever, because we can find everything at our fingertips online, and also through a book format or videos and so forth, and figure out what successful folks are doing, what sets them apart. So I really obsessively studied what a lot of successful people were doing, what entrepreneurs were doing, what successful investors were doing, and I still do that to today. And I realized that there was a framework that they all had. They all have a framework of these things that they do. So, and I just looked at this framework as that. Well, this is something that to be utilized to create the architecture of your overall wealth strategy. And parts of the framework, the first thing is they all produced and created income in some way, shape, or form. Most of them have their own businesses. There's a lot of folks that are very, very high paid and skilled employees. They're CEOs, VPs. I mean, we look at all the big corporations. They're in the role of an employee, but they know how to generate income, right?
Right.
There's incentives for them to do so. So you have to figure out how to create and produce income, and you do that by figuring out how you can add value to the marketplace. And that was the quickest way to figure that out. How do I get to produce and create more income? Well, I have to produce and create more value to the marketplace. There's a direct correlation. There's a cause and effect to that. I could see that with all the successful people. Look at the things that they've produced that have changed our lives, and the result of that was they were generating income because of the value that they created. That was the first part. The second part was they all position capital somewhere. So cash creation is the first one. But cash capture, capturing the value of your savings and positioning it somewhere, was the second step. So they know how to make money, and they also know how to protect money. And there's a way that they do that, and there's a way that they protect what they've created and capture this value that they've created in the marketplace. And then the third piece of that is cash flow creation. They all know, all these very successful folks know within their strategy that they have to make their money by producing and creating value. They have to capture the value that they produced and created and position the capital that was a result from that value and the production that they've produced for the marketplace. And then now they have to deploy that capital in a manner which creates more capital for them and makes more money. And there's a certain way that they do that. We all know about real estate, obviously, as being a great way to do that, to generate cash flow. And then the fourth piece, which is the very, 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 very important piece, I call it cash control. And essentially what it is this is protecting what you produce and create, what you capture, and the cash flow that you create. So what I put into that bucket would be tax strategy, which is the number one and greatest and biggest wealth destroyer. There is no close competition.
Right.
It's the largest check that you will ever write, and a lot of folks in our community and our network know that, and they definitely do so, and yours as well. Proper asset protection, protecting your assets, and then estate planning would also fall into that. So I looked at this framework, and every single successful person that I look at, and I still do it today, and it's amazing. I said they have these four things. They all do it. They do it in different ways, but essentially they have this architecture with these four things that allows them to grow their wealth through systems and processes within this framework predictably every single year, regardless of the economy and marketplace.
Wow. So that's really helpful I think, for anybody to hear. But that sounds like it was definitely helpful based on what, you've been able to create with Cashflow Ninja and Producers Wealth. So I want to talk a little bit more about, you've broken down cash flow investing in a way that I think, I understood it in a broader sense before we started talking, MC, but I'll be honest, the word, I feel like, goes a little bit deeper than my understanding of it. So, you touch on it and you defined what, cash flow investing was for you, but also if you could just, reiterate what you think the best definition for yourself or for investors of cash flow investing is, and, what exactly, how you look at it.
Absolutely. So essentially the way that we have been taught or educated or programmed or
yeah, it's a good word for it,
is to basically just save money, right? Mm-hmm. Put it in an area that you're saving. And for a lot of folks, this is let's just say qualified retirement plans in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, which is very, very different, right? Saving for retirement in stocks, for example, that's investing for retirement, not saving. But essentially, it's focused on accumulation. So accumulation is people would put money aside. It will accumulate over time. And then hopefully by the time they're ready to get into retirement, there's a mountain of money and they can draw from that. Cash flow investing is a little bit different. And cash flow investing is where you're investing in assets that's paying you today, cash flow after all of the expenses are paid. So with real estate, if you have a property and you have a tenant in that property, after all of the expenses is paid, there's money left over at the end of the month. So you're earning income from that property because essentially that property is a business that is operating at a profit for you. And so it's paying you that today. And by the way, there's a lot of different things that folks can do to do that and utilize very, very powerful vehicles such as Roth IRAs and so forth to do cash flow investing. I just look at one of the definitions of wealth that I've learned on my journey is that essentially when you break it all down, there's a lot of different freedoms, but where does wealth tie in? What's the definition of it? Well, essentially, in the end, it's the freedom of your time, right? Because in the end, we're all trying to work towards quote unquote retirement, which I don't like that word so much, but essentially what it means is somebody's going to be able to have enough money so that they no longer have to work and now they own their time, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like the way you frame that.
So essentially if freedom and being wealthy means having the freedom of time, then cash flow investing is something that can produce that freedom of how you spend your time today or in a shorter time frame than having to wait 30 to 40 years to do that. One of the things that I've also learned, we've mentioned Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, but one of the questions that his rich dad asked him too, if he stopped working today, how long would he be able to live at his current standard of living that he's living at right now into the future? And that's a very powerful question because that shows you that essentially with that mindset, that wealth is measured in time, not necessarily money. So a lot of folks might say, well, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months. But then there are some folks that might say, well, right now I get enough income from my investments and on a monthly basis that covers all of my living expenses. And these investments, such as, let's just say real estate, they keep up with the rate of inflation. So because we could raise rents and so forth as inflation goes up. So essentially you then have infinite wealth because you can sustain your quality and your standard of living infinitely had you stopped working today. And I think when you get to that realization and you make that a goal, and even if you achieve it, the lives of people just change because a lot of them, by the way, don't stop working because they actually love what they do.
Right.
I think about it that way. You can choose to do what you want to at that stage because you have freedom over that time. So that's what cash flow investing means for me. It's simply a way where instead of investing and accumulating assets over a long period of time to hopefully at the end of 30 or 40 years have a mountain of money to then turn into income, which is what most folks try to do with retirement, is turn that accumulated funds into income. Why don't we focus on it today, and why don't we position capital in powerful places that really puts rocket fuel on what we're doing?
Absolutely. I love the emphasis that you have on the economy of time and just how important of a factor it is in terms of investing, and how, we hear a lot about, I think, I'm at the age where I definitely should start thinking seriously about things like this. And I hear a lot about start now, because then you can build your wealth. But in terms of, how necessarily to do that in a way that my time is still able to be my time, is definitely something I value and consider too. So I love the way that you frame that, MC. You also mentioned infinite banking. If you could define, I think you touched on it in the end of your explanation of cash flow investing, but is infinite banking then the idea that, you're able to be able to afford your current living expenses with income that you're getting from these investments that are a little bit outside those accumulating investments, like the stocks and bonds that you mentioned?
Yeah, so infinite banking is using high cash value life insurance to position capital. And so in the framework, we make our money through producing and creating value to the marketplace, and we've got to position it somewhere. Now, where are some good places to position capital, and why? Well, one of the first things that we have to take into consideration, if you're going to put money somewhere, we're going to have to look at the game of money and what some of your biggest threats out there are. So I've mentioned that taxes are your number one and greatest threat. So if you're putting your money somewhere right now, where would you put it to protect it from taxes later on? Because tying into our previous point about cash flow investing, essentially, if you're getting hit with a massive tax bill at the end of your life when you're starting to live off income from your investments solely, it's literally, the taxes is a vehicle to steal your time, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at wealth in such a way. So where are places to position capital where you pay taxes that you legally owe on the seed, but not the harvest, right?
Right.
So instead of putting your money into a place where it grows, and now you've got to pay Uncle Sam a portion of that, which we don't even know what that is. We can speculate and guess, and it doesn't look pretty by the way that the national debts are being run at. You find vehicles such as one of our favorite ones, the Roth IRA, because essentially that is a vehicle that allows you to grow your wealth tax-free. And when you're going to draw money from the Roth IRA, you're not going to pay taxes on that money. So it's a very, very powerful vehicle. But there's a couple of things with that. You are limited to the amount of money that you can put in there, right? So after you have money in a Roth, where's another place to position capital? And that's where infinite banking comes in. So a lot of folks and a lot of clients of Producers Wealth, they answer the question by saying, I've already maxed out now my Roth contributions. Where else can I position capital that, number one, protects it from taxes? I'll pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest, and then I could utilize that capital to invest and into alternative assets to help grow my wealth. So it kind of answers that question. And that's why I love the dovetail of these two, because with the one vehicle in combination with the other, you have two very powerful vehicles and buckets to position capital. So the infinite banking strategy is simply using high cash value life insurance policies. It's from a mutual insurance company. You set up a dividend paying whole life insurance policy that's structured specifically to maximize the cash value. So most folks think of life insurance as death insurance, right? You get a life insurance policy, and somebody only benefits when you pass away, right?
Yeah,
I call that death insurance.
That's a good way to think about it. If you're because it is such a morbid thing, putting a note to it. I feel like definitely helps.
It's not a topic that people get excited about. But then when we show them that actually it's called life insurance for a reason. Yes, there's a death benefit. There's the death insurance part of it. But essentially, if life insurance, if structured very, very specifically to the infinite banking philosophy, and overfunded insurance is what a lot of folks call it too, is a phenomenal way to position capital, because you're putting money into these policies, and most of your premiums that you're paying for insurance, which nobody likes to pay insurance premiums, most of it, 70 to 80% goes straight to the cash value of the policy. That's the first thing. The money in there is guaranteed. So these companies, mutual insurance companies, have been around for, close to 150 to 200 years. Very, very, very successful and well-managed companies. They're not listed on the stock exchanges. They're not part of the Wall Street kind of casino, if folks want to call it that. It's completely outside of that. The money that's in there is guaranteed. It's guaranteed to grow at a certain rate. You also get to participate in dividend distributions, which dividends essentially is the profits that these insurance companies generate. As a policyholder, you're a shareholder, and then and the growth inside of the vehicle is completely tax free. You can access your money through a policy loan, which I'll get to in a second, tax free, to utilize to invest into real estate, to grow your business, and so forth. There's a death benefit then that is distributed tax-free to your beneficiaries, which could be a trust, or it could be a spouse, or it could be children, grandchildren, and so forth, which is pretty powerful. And there's a lot of other things that you can add to that to protect the value, let's just say, of your production and creation. You can add a disability rider to it, which in the event that you become disabled, then the premiums are then paid by the insurance company. And in most states, by the way, this is also, and states are different, but in most states, the cash value is protected from creditors, and there's very good asset protection established for that. So that's why we position capital in there. The other thing is you really get to utilize one of my favorite wild strategies that I've learned from very successful folks is you utilize a collateralization strategy. Now, MC, it's a mouthful, but essentially what it is when business owners get loans to grow their business, they go to the bank, and the bank uses as collateral the receivables of the business or the assets of the business to extend them credit or loans, right? So they're simply just collateralizing the business, which is an asset, to get liquidity, a loan, to then go, let's just say, buy another asset. We had someone in our network this year bought the building from which his business operates through collateralizing the business. So he literally used his business to acquire another asset. So you could do the same thing with gold and silver, commodity-based lending. So you can actually place your gold and silver for collateral through a loan to then utilize the loan to acquire another asset. Let's just say buy real estate. So you use gold and silver. You could do it with art to go and purchase real estate, using one asset to purchase another one. A lot of folks did it in the 70s and 80s. One of my earlier mentors did that with CDs in a bank. Which at that stage paid double-digit interest rates. So they would position capital in the bank. They would go to a bank and open up a CD that, let's just say, paid to them 10%. And let's just say they put $100,000 in there. Then they would go back to that same bank and say, Mr. Banker, we have a CD with your bank of $100,000. Can we get a loan from the bank secured by and collateralized by that CD? And the bank would say, oh, well, of course, we'll give you a 90% of the value of your CD, we'll give it to you in a loan. So essentially, you're borrowing against something. Folks do this with their HELOCs too on their houses, which your HELOC is simply a credit line that's secured by the equity of your home. The exact same thing happens with the life insurance. So let's just say you overfund the life insurance. There's $100,000 in the life insurance policy, and you get a policy loan of up to 90% of the cash value. So you get a loan of 90%. Well, that $100,000 is still in your policy, guaranteed, growing, predictably tax-free, and then you get to utilize the money from the loan to invest in real estate, to grow your business, and so forth. So it's a very, very powerful vehicle. Overall, the infinite banking strategy is also very, very powerful, and it's one piece of your overall wealth strategy. But that in combination with Roth IRA is very powerful, and it's a great option for folks that have already maxed out the contributions to these powerful vehicles such as Roth IRAs.
Great. So, MC, I'm just going to compliment you. You're a great teacher because I'm already learning so much. Is this the kind of types of lessons or the way that you frame things for your clients at Cashflow Ninja and at Producers Wealth? I want to talk a little bit more about, your company specifically. You mentioned them in the beginning, but, what are how did these companies come about? What did they, which I think you touched on, but what do you focus on with each of them? And, what's a typical client look like? How are they benefiting from, cash flow investing and the education you can provide, which is focusing on, and if I understanding, your website and everything correctly, this media-based training and education that's helping people change the way they think about money. Can you talk a little bit more about, what these companies do, what your clients look like, and how your training in terms of media-based training first developed and how you're seeing it work?
Absolutely. So I'll start with Producer's Wealth, just finishing up on the infinite banking concept. We focus specifically to helping clients in all 50 states in the United States virtually structure a strategy and then establish these infinite banking policies for them. It was a different world in 2015 when we started virtually through Zoom, but It's finally caught up. So you
were ahead of the curve then.
Yeah, folks said, "Man, you were way ahead of this," and I said, "I know it's we were, but you have to remember in 2015 and 2016, it was still very new for folks, and it was." Maybe folks are a little out of their comfort zone at that stage too, working with folks virtually. Now, it's second nature, right? Everyone is now doing business through Zoom. So we work virtually with folks one-on-one. We help them establish a strategy, and then we help them set up these policies. Cashflow Ninja started as a podcast, which it started as a passion project to learn more about more different cash flow investing strategies and to share this with as many people as possible. Because I kept being asked from folks, well, what else? What else can we do to generate cash flow? And if you look at that question, the answer is there. There are so many different things that people do to generate cash flow. It is astounding, and I don't think can run out of content for our show. So we cover everything from all the different niches in real estate, all of the many businesses and online businesses and businesses that you can create or invest in or buy. We've looked at paper assets, which there is a plethora of them. We've looked at even blockchain and crypto niches and assets. And then we've obviously looked at commodities of how to utilize gold, silver, and all the other different commodities from coffee farms and overseas and so forth, and agricultural investments. So that started as a podcast, but essentially it's transitioned now into a digital company where we're trying to establish a platform for learning and for our programs to help clients now globally to walk them through a process of how to set up a wealth strategy with systems and processes that allows them to execute and generate cash flow. So Cashflow Ninja, how we work with clients is we have programs, digital programs. We have 3 programs right now, which folks across the world can sign up for, that walks them through the first program is a 4-week program, which takes them in 4 weeks from step 1 to where they need to be from just starting out and understanding that there's a different way of doing things to eventually having a comprehensive wealth strategy set up with processes and systems that's built around their strengths to allow them to generate income regardless of the economy and marketplace.
That's awesome. And I love that the name really does equate to the mentality that you're enabling people with through this education, MC. The idea that, ninjas are agile, they're quick thinking, they're smart, they're clever. I think that it's such a cool name for what it's become and what you're enabling your education or your clients, with through your education. So, I think that it's just awesome. And it's really cool to see how it's grown from a podcast. So I am curious also about your avid podcasting. You have how many podcasts that you produce and work on?
We have two right now, Cashflow Ninja and Cashflow Investing Secrets, and we've done over 700 episodes.
Wow,
since we started.
That is definitely, I have to commend you on that, because sometimes, we do one a week and I'm like, ooh, that's it. I'm done for the week. So, what first drew you to podcasting? How has this grown? Obviously it's grown since you first began, because now Cashflow Ninja is something that has gone, transcended beyond the podcast into a training program that people can utilize. But what are some of the other benefits you've seen or heard from some of your listeners over the years? And, how did the process for podcasting first begin? Because nowadays it's a popular form of media, but it's still one that's just a little bit out of left field. So it's different, especially I think for investors to hear, this podcast I can turn to.
Yeah, I think podcasting I think we're still in the beginning stages of where it's headed. I think the power of podcasting is, we've already seen it. If we just think of how we're going to live in this new world, which literally, I think, I mentioned to folks in 2020, we just fast forwarded 10 years and 6 months. If you look at some of the massive trends that are already out there, people are working from home. Most people were going to work from home anyway in 10 years, right? All of the studies that corporations have conducted, people are happier, more productive. They have a more balanced life. Some folks then have these long commutes. So everybody wins, employers and employees. So that was definitely one trend that we're looking at, digital businesses and conducting businesses digitally. Well, everyone was going to be digital in 10 years anyway. So a lot of analog and bricks and mortar businesses, even if you have a physical storefront, let's just say, you would have to have a digital side of your business to be able to survive, and also productize some of your offerings that could be sold and distributed digitally. It was just going to happen. Podcasting fits in perfectly to how people consume and get information. Collectively, I always joke and say, we humans, we're a strange species. We have the attention span of a gnat, because we have so many things that distract us and fight for our attention.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you capture someone's attention? Well, let's just say they still drive somewhere, or they work out, or they're just sitting and relaxing, or they're working on their computer. What do they do during the day while they're working and not on phone calls? Well, maybe they like to learn something or listen to interesting conversations, or whether it's health or money or relationships, they could turn to a podcast, because a podcast isn't something that it doesn't compete with anything else. When you're watching a movie, you have to look at the screen and watch,
a visual component to it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. When you're working, you can't work and watch a movie, but you can work and also listen to a podcast and learn something. So I think audio is a very, very powerful form. A lot of folks were calling it still audio blogging when I first started to look into this. So essentially, it's something that allows folks to put out great ideas, and if they're great, they're in the marketplace. So the great ideas will eventually become popular. Anyway, so the podcasting thing, I think, is only at the beginning of this. We just saw probably the biggest podcast, it's the biggest podcast in the world, where the person just signed a contract for $100 million to switch from one platform to another one exclusively. I think there's going to be many, many more of those. So because I could just see this medium continuing to grow, and this has become a new way of how people consume content and information. I just think about the newspapers and websites and people reading. Most folks don't even like to do that anymore, right? They just listen to the, to the information rather than reading it. Look at the power of audiobooks.
Right.
So I think the audio format is very, very, very powerful, and will continue to be powerful. And the podcasting thing, I think we're only just getting started, and it's been a lot of fun to see where it has been to where it is currently and where it's potentially going, because it was a small amount of folks listening to it initially, but it's just grown and grown and grown.
Yeah, it's a lot like, the television's just had its golden age and this and that. I think the golden age for podcasting is coming up, just like you're saying. I think you raise a lot of really cool and interesting points about this medium and how it can be used to help educate people, especially, and how it can be utilized to how the human mind works nowadays. I know I'm kind of spoiled in that, I get in my car and my phone immediately syncs to it. And I'm automatically listening, no matter, like if I turn my car on, I'm automatically listening to something. So I think that it's a really interesting strategy that you've implemented, and you were definitely ahead of the curve on. So I think that it's really cool.
It also provides so much access to information, which is,
definitely.
If you think about it, before podcasting, if there were folks that you were trying to get more information from and learn and study, you would, books was basically it. And then once in a while they did a media interview, and mostly that coincided with book releases, right?
Right.
But now literally, if you're a Tony Robbins fan, let's just say, for example, and you're looking for inspiration from Tony, well, you could get it daily. And he's talking to you daily through a podcast, which is also, it doesn't cost you anything, basically to consume that, where instead of having to purchase books and so forth, every day you get up, there's a podcast being downloaded on your phone, and you can get daily inspiration from it. If you're trying to learn from famous investors, legendary investors, Ray Dalio's got a podcast. All of these guys realize the power that this has. And for folks trying to learn and trying to generate and create wealth and invest, I'm like a little, like my two little kids. I'm like them when they go into a candy store, right? I get excited with all the information we have available.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's so true. Thank you for, sharing your candor on all of that and your really interesting take on all of it. I think it's going to be really eye-opening and helpful for a lot of our listeners. So, MC, I'm curious, about going back all the way back to the beginning, your early life, or even over the years as you've developed your podcast, developed the strategies that have become the strategies for cash flow investing that you share with your clients and your listeners. What are some of the early successes or failures that you've had, and what were you able to take away? What major lessons did you learn from them? I know, you've talked a lot about things that have happened in your life that have led to another thing that's come up, or some of the takeaways you've had there. But what are some of the big, events that happened as an investor for you, or as a podcaster even, that you've had to take from and grow in terms of like, oh, these are you mentioned, school starts when you start becoming an investor. What are some of the big lessons that you learned from that?
Yeah, and there's been many failures. Sometimes I joke and say, you fail your way to success, because everyone that is especially targeting and going after big visions and big dreams and big goals, you're going to fail, and you're going to continue to fail until you start becoming successful. So I would say one of the big things, and this is, I think, where the sports background helped too, is to not give up, to be very, very disciplined, and just not give up on your dreams and on your goals. And the other thing that I would also say, one of the big things that I've learned, and everyone will face adversity in their life and challenges, because that's just part of life in one way, shape, or form, whether it be health, whether it be money, whether it be relationships. You're going to face adversity at some stage. And one of when things started to turn around for myself is when I adopted the mantra of owning my own outcomes, taking responsibility and ownership for everything, regardless of what has happened. Because in that moment of saying, this is me, I take responsibility for this, I own my outcomes, it took the power of all the external factors outside of you away.
Right.
It took that away, it neutralized that. So now all of a sudden, I own my own outcomes. I'm accountable. I'm responsible. I don't care about the economy. I don't care about the markets. I can't control that. I will focus on what I can control. and I will take responsibility for for all the decisions and so forth. So I think once you adopt that mantra and you persist and you never give up and you never fall into the victimhood, I think you're gonna come out on the other end, and it'll continue. Life is full of that. You'll continue to have challenges. You'll continue to have time of adversity, but you just have to keep moving forward, right?
Right, exactly. No, I think that's great. Thank you for sharing. I'm also curious too, you mentioned we're in the age of information, and I totally agree with you. So what are some interesting new things or new mediums or new podcasts that you've listened to even that have come across, whether it's been in these 6-8 months, I don't know what time is anymore, I'll be honest, in these months of being, working from home and this and that, or even in general, is there a tool that you use or a resource that you go back to repeatedly in order to keep up with your knowledge of investing now, MC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, I believe we are in one of the times in human history of the greatest transformation, the fastest, most chaotic, changing environment that we will be in. I think if folks think 2020 was a wild ride, hang on for the next 5 years. I think we're essentially. Folks call it the fourth industrial revolution. The things that are ahead: AI, robotics, 3D printing. I mean, driverless vehicles. You talk about, you name it. I think we're in a time of change and rapid change and continuous change. I can see the disruptors being disrupted severely in the next year. I mean, things are speeding up so quickly. That being said, I also think it's one of the most exciting times to be alive ever. If we could pick a time to live in, when we've seen massive changes that we're living through right now. I mean, you could think back of times when we went from the agricultural age to the industrial revolution, right? Mm-hmm. But you had to own a lot of land or have factories or companies at that stage to benefit from it. I think through technology, the playing field is level today. And I think folks that anticipate and see trends coming and see changes and see them unfold and position themselves for it will have the opportunity to generate wealth that they couldn't even dream of. One of the things that I'm looking at and studying obsessively right now is, especially on the money side, what is about to happen in the world from a financial standpoint. We've seen that most countries and the way that the global financial system is structured is very, very much unsustainable. So that being said, what's going to be the solution? Well, that's when the fun part comes in, right? Because then we sort of have to play the crystal ball game and be in the crystal ball business, which is a very, very tough business to be in. It's a
difficult business, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very tough business. So you can anticipate and see what's coming by looking at what massive think tanks are putting out, what legislation is on the books and so forth. So I'll give you some examples. So the International Monetary Fund talked about having a new Bretton Woods agreement or new Bretton Woods moment. For a lot of folks that are not familiar with that, the Bretton Woods agreement was signed in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire after the Second World War, which essentially changed the entire money system of the world at that stage. The United States emerged from that war as a superpower after World War II, and at the Bretton Woods Conference, the United States dollar was established as the world reserve currency. So that was a very, very big moment, and the money system in the world essentially changed at that stage. The next time there was a shift like that was in 1971, where President Richard Nixon essentially closed the convertibility of the world's reserve currency, the US dollar, which many countries held at that stage, over to gold. So most folks call it, the closing of the gold window or the Nixon shock. They have many different terms that they call it. So every 30 to 40 years, there's been a massive change in the global monetary system and the global financial system. And we see the IMF saying we need a new Bretton Woods agreement. We see many different countries now talking about digital currencies and having their own cryptocurrencies. At the time of recording right now, China has got a test pilot of testing their own digital currency. The European Union just released a paper in 2020 calling for a digital euro. In the United States, there was a bill submitted to Congress, which included a digital US dollar. It's not been approved. It's not been voted on. It's not been signed. But these are the things that we're just looking at and seeing that there's going to be massive changes coming ahead. So it's very interesting to look at this and to see, well, how is this all going to play out? Because it looks like there's a new digital world, and digital money is going to be factoring in very heavily into that. So that's some of the things that we look at. I always say to folks that, again, this is the most exciting time ever to live in. When I came to the United States, I had to literally go down to the 7-Eleven and buy a calling card and spend $20. And when I called my parents in South Africa, it probably lasted 5 minutes. And then I had to call them again, type in the new code of the new calling card. The line, it was almost like someone else is on the line with you. Now, today, literally, I have my smartphone and I can call my parents and we could look at each other and talk to each other on a mobile phone, a smartphone, and it doesn't cost me a single cent. I joke and say it's literally Star Trek technology for free.
Right. Yeah. Think about it. It's like point A to point Z plus at this point. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot. I'm very, very excited for a lot of things, the changes that are happening, and I think there's going to be so much opportunity for folks that anticipate these changes and position themselves for it, because usually with technology, it increases the life experience for everyone. Just look at what smartphones have done for everyone, and it also increases the standard of living across the globe. If you think about how folks lived 100 years ago, how folks lived 250, 300 years ago, to how they live now globally, I mean, it's pretty impressive what we have at our fingertips, which folks couldn't even dream of.
Absolutely. I think you raise a ton of amazing points. And I think these are very eye-opening points as well for a lot of people, especially, even people who have had, I straddle that line of like, I didn't have a smartphone till I was just about to leave high school and those sorts of things, but I don't remember life before it. So I think you're definitely appealing to, probably my mindset, or a lot of new investors, younger investors too, in the idea that like, okay, well, take control of the fact that you have so much at your disposal. So thank you for sharing that. As we wind down to the last couple of questions, one of the things, you touched on a lot of characteristics that have made you successful and that have made others around you desirable mentors or successful folks as well. So I'm curious, we ask all of our guests, what would you say are your keys to building wealth and unlocking your financial freedom? It doesn't have to be financial, but what is something that has informed the way you look at success, or what makes someone a successful investor? I know you've thrown out a lot of great words out there. Like one thing that sticks out to me in particular is, accountability and things like that. So if you can summarize those into a couple points, MC, what do you think the way that you personally look at, personal success or financial success, what would that be for you?
I would say that you have to have systems and processes in place. So especially with wealth, I just look at trying to implement it in all areas of my life that I'm trying to improve in. So even if I'm trying to get more healthier, well, I need a system. What's my system, right? So how am I going to do that? I'm going to get up at a certain time. I'm going to work out. I've got a goal of drinking X amount of water every day. And then I have a meal plan planned out ahead and for the week. And that's a system, and the processes of executing it differs on some days, but I have a system that's planned and mapped out that I follow. And because of that system, I start to see results. I start to feel better. Mm-hmm. I get enough sleep. I feel hydrated all the time. I feel better when I work out. My energy levels increases because I'm following the system and doing that. The same thing with wealth. You have to have systems in place and then have processes within those systems, because if you're doing things consistently, you'll start to see results, incremental results. Because in the world we have universal laws of cause and effect. So if we do certain things consistently on a daily basis, it's going to have a massive effect. And you'll start to see small little changes, and then all of a sudden there'll be exponential increases in success in that area. Because over time, that consistency of just doing it every single day, or following a system and executing those processes, you're going to get that exponential process. It's, I go back to the health analogy, where when you first start a new diet and exercise routine, you don't see really that much of a difference in the first week, maybe the second week. By the third week, you start to see a difference. By the fourth week, there's a massive difference, and then it just snowballs from there.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest thing. If folks want to create success in anything, systems and processes is definitely key. And another lesson that I learned from a mentor is our life reflects our minimum standards, not necessarily our highest aspirations, mm-hmm. which I thought was so powerful. Because yes, we could have very big aspirations and do it once a while, but we're still going to have the results of our minimum standards, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's what I would tell listeners is systems and processes, and your minimum standards are very, very important, and that's more or less what the results that you're going to achieve, rather than your highest aspirations.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, MC. I, enjoyed every moment of this conversation. You are definitely such a great educator, very funny, and, I could sit and talk to you all day. So thank you so much for this valuable insight, and, for all the information you were able to pack into this hour. I think our listeners are going to gain so much from what you have to say, and hear a lot of things that are going to help them understand how to take control of not only their wealth, but, all of the information they have available to them. So one final question before we sign off and close everything out is, how can people reach you? Do you have social media or any particular email that you would like to put out there for any listeners who would like to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They could go to cashflowninja.com to find everything around Cashflow Ninja. We also have a free course on infinite banking for folks that they can find at yourownbankingsystem.com, Your Own Banking System. And then if they want to reach out to us by email, they could just shoot us an email at info@cashflowninja.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, you know what? Be on the lookout, everybody, for any upcoming events with CamaPlan featuring MC Laubscher and Cashflow Ninja. But until then, thank you everyone for joining us again this week on the road to financial freedom. Be sure to tune in next week to hear more from our experts who have paved their roads to financial freedom, or call CamaPlan today to learn more about how you can start to take control of your future wealth. Thanks again, MC, and everyone have a great week. Thank you all for tuning into our podcast. We truly hope that you're enjoying your ride along the road to financial freedom so far. If you like what you've heard and learned, or if you want to hear more about certain topics that we may have already covered or have yet to cover, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear any feedback from you so that we may continue to make our podcast the best that it can be for you, our listeners. Thanks again, everyone, and remember, tune in next week to the road to financial freedom.